Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, we're going to talk about one of my favorite Lightroom features, that's range masking. Range masking allows you to make very precise and selective adjustments using just a couple simple sliders. Now, you used to have to use Photoshop and use complex masking techniques to get a similar result. So it's pretty amazing that you can use Lightroom and do it even faster. So let's check out some examples. I think you guys are going to be pretty impressed with the results. Okay, just to cover some basics here. Range masking is a feature embedded in the selective tool, so it is only an option with the graduated filter, the radial filter, and the adjustment brush. Now I find myself using it with the grad filter and the adjustment brush most of the time, so that's what we're going to focus on in these examples. So I'm just going to click to add a general filter here, and let's look at this option of range mask. So you have all your selective tool adjustments, and then at the very bottom, you'll see this range mask option. And I'll just click to toggle. So I can use range mask to refine an adjustment based on color or luminance. Depth is also an option, but many, and I would say most raw file formats from cameras today do not support depth. Now this is something in the future that could become quite interesting, but we're going to focus on color and luminance in this example. So let's reset and take a step back and just look at this image. So there's a lot of dynamic range. And in a perfect world, we probably would have done some exposure bracketing in the field, maybe done some blending. But using this range mask feature in a grad filter, we can actually get a pretty similar result. So I'm going to close this out, and the first thing we're going to do is make some general adjustments. So I'm just going to maximize and expand the dynamic range. I'm going to bring up the shadows in the blacks and maybe a little bit of exposure. And what I'm looking for, I just want to bring out the shadows, right? We had almost pure black in the shadows, looking a little bit better now. But the sky is a little too bright, and even, we're getting some blown out highlights here. So let's go over to grad filter. And let's click and drag it over the sky, and let's just darken down the sky. So I'm going to decrease exposure, bring the highlights down a little bit. Can even make some color balance adjustments. Maybe I want to add some magenta and warmth, really bring out that beautiful light from this morning, maybe a little bit of saturation too. So that looks great. The problem is that when I apply this decrease in exposure, it's not just affecting the sky, it's also affecting those dark areas that I just tried to recover. So if I go down to the bottom here and check this Show Selected Mask Overlay, you can also use the keyboard shortcut O, it's going to show me that grad filter. In the red area, that red overlay is what's being affected. So you can see not just the sky is being affected, those C-stacks are as well. So we can use range masking to actually restrict this adjustment to just the brighter spots of an area, of the image. So what we're going to do is go down to range mask, and we're going to choose luminance. And we have a couple options here. Let's just walk through what we have. We have a luminance range selector. I don't use this too often, but I can basically pick a point in the image, either a bright or dark spot, and the adjustment will be refined based on the point I select. I can toggle on and off this luminance mask, and it'll show me a preview of what's being affected. So again, the red overlay is showing what's getting the adjustment, and I'll just mess with these sliders. You can see as I move them, that red overlay is changing. So those sliders I were just moving with range, those are really the key to the luminance range mask. There's two. There's the black point and the white point. If I drag this black point to the right, what will happen is the adjustment will be slowly removed from the darkest parts of an image. And just the reverse, if I use the white point and move it to the left, the adjustment will be taken out of the brightest parts of an image. So sometimes I check on Show Luminance Mask just to get a start. And now, remember, we want to remove the adjustment from these dark spots, right? So I'm going to check on Show Luminance Mask. I'll just grab this slider and move it to the right. And we can already see right around, 4250, those blacks are being spared, right? So I'll uncheck. Let's just look at a before and after. Here's before. Here's after. So a couple of things happening here? So I'm not only getting that recovery in the blacks, but I'm also getting it in the sky, some of those darker clouds as well. So I'm balancing the exposure, but I'm not getting the dark spots in the clouds and these sea stacks. They're not too dark. And I can come in here and kind of adjust. Maybe I want somewhere around there. And let's just do, here's before. Look at the sea stacks, before, after. So you can see they're not getting any of this adjustment. Those shadows are being spared and the adjustments just being refined and applied to those bright spots in the image. Now I can also work with this smoothness slider here. And this is just kind of the transition between bright and dark tones. I find 50 is a really good spot. If I move it to the left, you'll start to see some pretty nasty artifacts. So when I do move this slider, I usually move it to the right. And that sometimes just brings a little bit of the contrast back. If you want a preview of what the smoothness slider is doing, hold down Alt or Option on your keyboard and select the slider. So here's at 50, this is default, and this is usually what I stick with. If I move it to the left, you can see now just the darkest blacks are being affected. If I move it to the right, now it's the blacks, and if I move it even more, now we're getting some of the midtones to come in as well. So I think 50 is actually a good spot. And like I said, when I'm working with a luminance range mask, usually I'm just adjusting either my black right here or my white point slider. So this looks pretty good to me. I'll click done. This is before, this is after. So I was able to recover the shadows, but also darken down the sky and just get the image more balanced. Let's just do a total before and after. This was before any grad filter. So this was before the grad filter. This was after. So pretty amazing, right? Usually you'd have to exposure blend or do some HDR blending to get this result. But using a grad filter and using the luminance range mask, you can refine your adjustment to just affect the highlights or the shadows, and now we have a very nice balanced image that we can continue to make adjustments to. So this is something I do all the time for images with a lot of dynamic range, like this, where I have deep dark shadows and very bright highlights. I'll use a grad filter, I'll balance the exposure, and I'll use that range mask luminance feature to kind of control where I want the adjustment applied to. So let's move on to our next example, and we're going to now look into using the color option of range masking. So first glance at this image, really nice dramatic light. And I think I want to enhance that and kind of accentuate that light. So I want these areas of the hoodoos and the badlands here to get more, I want more contrast, more brightness, maybe a little bit of warmth too. So we're going to use the adjustment brush for this. And just default brush settings, feather and flow at 100, auto mask off. And just to see where I'm painting, I'm going to turn up exposure. And I'm just going to do a really rough brush stroke here. You can see I'm not being careful at all to restrict this brush stroke just to those areas that are getting light. And I'm going to show you why I'm not too concerned with that. So let's just look. Here's before, here's after, really sloppy brush strokes. Now I'm just going to look maybe right at this area. I'm just going to focus here and make the adjustment I want. So I want brighter, I want more contrast. And I can refine this as well. Maybe a little bit of warmth. And that looks pretty good. That's kind of the light, that's how I want to bring out the light on this image. The downside is though, I have all this bleeding of this brush stroke in the background. The cool shadows here are also getting that adjustment. So let's go down to range mask here and let's turn on color. So color will refine this adjustment based on the color or colors of the image that I select. So what we have is this color range selector, and this is going to be the key to the color range mask. So there's a couple ways I can use this selector. I'm going to pick what color I want the adjustment applied to. So I could click here once, and that does a pretty good job. But I have two other options. I can hold down Shift, and I can select multiple color ranges or colors in the image. That'll kind of expand the range. My favorite is the last. If I left click and hold, I can draw a box, and any color in that box will get the adjustment. So let's go up here a little bit. I'm just going to draw a box, something like that, and release. Now look at what just happened. Let's go to before. So this is before. Look, like I said, you know, the shadows here, they're not cool anymore. They're getting that warmth. They're getting that brightness. The sky's getting, you know, that adjustment. There's really bad, you know, bleeding over of that brush stroke in the sky here. All we did was go to range mask color. I you know, highlighted a box around the colors I wanted affected, and look at the difference. Look at that. It's just amazing. Before, after. So, I mean, that's an amazing result. And to get this result before, I would have probably had to spend more time in Photoshop to get to the same spot. So I really think that this is a really amazing feature in Lightroom. Now, we do have this amount slider associated with the color range mask too. And this just refers to the range of colors. So if I move it to the left, the range is going to be narrowed. So only those colors, those specific colors where I picked or in the box that I selected will be included and get the adjustment. If I move it all the way to the right, that range is going to be expanded. So now you can see some of the cooler tones here are getting that adjustment now. Just like with Luminance, most of the time 50 right in the middle is good for me. And if I do adjust this left or right, it's maybe plus or minus 15 or 20 points. I don't stray too far. And I think right around 50 leaves this effect. There's nice feathering. There's a nice transition. I'm happy with this. So if we just go, let's go to before. Here's before. And here's after. Look at all the light we added to this image. Pretty amazing. And here's before the color range mask. And here's after. So awesome result. Okay, let's cover one more here, and we'll kind of look at luminance and the color range mask. So a couple things here. I think I want to darken the sky and add some contrast, and then maybe just bring out some of the color, some of that light hitting this rock face. So I'm going to grab a grad filter for the sky. I'm just going to pull it over the sky, decrease exposure, add some contrast, you know, maybe bump up my highlights a little, something like that. So that looks really good, but if I toggle on this mask overlay, a lot of the shadows here are being affected. So I'm going to go over to Luminance Range Mask. And again, we want to keep this out of the darker areas of the image. So I'm going to go to this black point slider and just move it to the right. And you'll see as I do that, especially here in those dark shadows, that adjustment is being removed from those areas. So let's see what this looks like before and after. So here's before, here's after. So we're not affecting those blacks and those deep shadows. We're still getting nice luminosity there and nice detail. And here's a before and after. And again, if we wanted to recover even more of those dark areas, I can continue to move this. And that's what I do a lot. I'll make one movement, and then I'll come back, look at the image, and kind of, fine tune it and make those smaller minor movements in the slider. And then maybe, maybe if I move smoothness a little bit to the right, and I sometimes like doing that because I find it maintains a little bit more contrast in the highlights. So I might move it to 60 or so. And now let's look. Here's before, here's after. And let's do a total before and after. Here's before that grad filter, here's after. So looking pretty good. And we get a little bit of darkness here, from that exposure blend, but I'm pretty happy with it. We've done good recovery, so there's still good detail here, and the sky's looking much better. Okay, now with this rock face here, I'm going to grab my adjustment brush, and I'm just going to make, again, general brush strokes here. And much like the last example, I'm going to warm this up, maybe add some magenta, add some contrast. It looks pretty good right there. All right, so let's go down to range mask. I'll select color. I'm going to grab my color range selector, and I'm just going to draw a box around where I see the colors that I want affected. So somewhere around here, and I'll release. So look at that. Here's before. So we had colors, we had some of that brushstroke bleeding over here in the water. Now water was getting overly warm and a little bit bleeding over on the edge here. And after a simple color range mask, look at that. Before, after. So let's just do a total before and after this image. Here was before. and here was after. So we added some really nice light and saturation and warmth here, and then darkened down the sky. So like I said, range masking in Lightroom is one of my favorite features. If you're not using it, you definitely should check it out because it's very simple and pretty intuitive once you get the hang of it. And I actually think it's faster than doing the same thing using masking in Photoshop. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave us a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this. Other than that, take care and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.